Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benziger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benziger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. This week, I am joined by Mr. Vincent Spadoni, Principal of St. Elizabeth School in Rockville, Maryland for the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. Hello, Vincent. Welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Well, good morning, Raul. It's great to be with you this morning. Very excited to be a part of this podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad you could be with us. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been very fortunate to have served as the principal of St. Elizabeth School, where I currently am, finishing my 13th year here. Prior to that, I was the principal of St. Ambrose Catholic School in Cheverly, Maryland. I was there for 5 years. And 2 years before that, I served as the vice principal here. I've also currently serve as a consultant for the Archdiocese of Washington in the area of development. So I help other Catholic schools. I work with other Catholic school principals, their boards, in finding other ways to bring revenue into the school outside of tuition. So very blessed to be a part of this diocese now for 20 years, and I feel very honored to be the principal of this. First and foremost, very honored to be the principal of this school.
Excellent. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to share a little bit about that Instagram star that is your dog. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your dog?
Well, I always say it goes back to childhood trauma. My parents would never allow my brother and me to have a Great Dane. So after I bought my first house, the next purchase I made was a Great Dane, and that dog has since passed, and now I have Zita, which means little girl in Tuscan Italian, so a little play on words. And she's 4, and some days I feel like I live in Jurassic Park. But she brings a lot of joy to my life, and when I bring her to school, she brings a lot of joy to the kids' lives. So that's nice.
Have you ever? Well, I'm sure you've stood her on her hind legs. How tall is that girl of yours when she stands up?
She's about 6 feet tall when she stands up.
Wow.
Yeah. But she's a sleek 120 pounds, just like the doctor wants her. Keep the hips. That'll keep her hips stronger if she can keep that weight.
But she's also a miniature horse in a way. We can say that, right?
She is a miniature. Yeah, absolutely. And when you take her for walks in the neighborhood, everybody knows her. And for those who don't, people pull their cars over on the side of the road just to get an extra look.
Yeah, so, just make sure you don't put a saddle on her and give pony rides or something like that.
Exactly. And believe me, I have to admit, I do like the extra attention, so it's all good.
Oh, that's awesome. So what does the life of a principal at St. Elizabeth School look like?
Oh, life of a principal. So I would say the first word when I mention new principals, the first word I always say is unpredictable. So you walk in thinking that your day is going to be 4 classroom walkthroughs, and you're going to visit the cafeteria, and somehow by the end of the day, everything that you thought it was going to be is somehow upended, and that's all the good thing. So a lot of time here for me, certainly greeting students, a big part of my morning and a big part of my afternoon, and trying to get into classrooms as often as possible. And a lot of my work is with adults. I mean, I think sometimes elementary school principals don't realize how much time they devote to issues that are going on with teachers personally, as well as what they're dealing with in their classrooms, and meeting with parents and hearing about their struggles and their difficulties, and how our Catholic family here can support them in that journey. So a lot of my day, I wish more of my day was spent actually with kids, which a lot of it is, but there's also a lot more pieces that go into that that kind of make up our family, I guess.
Fantastic. So I know that you have some inclusive programs going on at St. Elizabeth School. Can you tell me what those are looking like right now?
So when I started here back in 2005, we employed one resource teacher, and that teacher really would float mostly in the lower school. And that was when our school had an enrollment of probably around 450 students. Since that time, with God's help and Our Lady's help, I always say, our enrollment has increased to close to 600. So we have tripled the resource department here. So the three resource specialists, we have a director who also does work directly with children, and then we have 2 full-time resource teachers, and then we also have volunteer former teachers who are grandparents or former grandparents, former parents who offer their help on a weekly basis to work in small groups with children with a variety of needs. And sometimes it's getting certain students organized, of executive functioning who need help in that area. A lot of times it's working with children who require additional time to take tests. What we're most proud of is students that years ago we would not have been able to service well or to service to potential at St. Elizabeth School. Children with a variety of reading disabilities, especially in the area of dyslexia. Not only are we servicing those children well, all of those boys and girls are being admitted to our Catholic high schools, which I feel is a great testament to the program we've developed here.
That's amazing to hear, Vincent.
Yes.
Tell me
Very
how
proud of it.
Tell me how, if you're tapping into your school family, as it were, how has that helped change the mindset? Because I know you're a big fan of growth mindset. How has that changed the mindset of your school as a whole?
That took a little bit of time. It's a great question, Raul. It takes a little bit of time, and it takes a lot of I would say natural work on the part of teachers. So if we have to pull some kids here, it becomes a natural part of the day, rather than something that's seen as something that's unnatural. And that again took time to get there. But what really was the change came when those families that already had 3 children in the school, those devoted families, then had a child who required additional support. And when those families, kind of the ones that were always seen as doing a lot of things for the school, their children, guess what? Their children needed help too. And it suddenly became, and again, gradually, an okay thing to even look to ask, my child is struggling, what else can we do? Should we be going for academic testing? Years ago, we would somewhat fight parents on having their children tested. I would say now it's just a part of our culture. It's really become a part of the culture here.
Fantastic. That's so wonderful to hear. And just the barriers that are being broken down just with the parents of if we can say typical students that understand that everybody can use a little bit of help. And it's just
absolutely.
It's amazing. So I'm going to shift a little bit and basically along the same vein. So when you mentor principals, let's help some principals out there. What can we do to have them start considering to have that conversation for inclusion in their schools? Because since you seem to now getting a handle on it, what can we do for new principals that might want to start looking at that?
I think sometimes the fear comes to some new principals is that your school will be labeled a special ed school if you start accepting children who require any type of support. And I would say that's one of the falsest statements I have ever. Certainly, it's not my lived experience. And again, it's a gradual process. It's not something you can embark on overnight. It requires financial resources. So for some schools that don't have those, that sometimes requires maybe a building up of enrollment. So now that you have additional boys and girls in your school, additional tuition revenue, that's how we were able to do this. We were able to then expand what we were able to offer in the academic world. But I think there first needs to be an openness on the part of the principal who is working closely. I have an excellent, very, very supportive, strong advisory board who is behind what we're doing here at the school. Again, several on the advisory board have children who receive academic support here at St. Elizabeth. So that's something principals also lack of a better way to say it, used to their advantage, is getting a team of people that really support you and can help to get the word out that this is a good thing for your school, and you're also living out the mission of what the church is asking, especially what Pope Francis is asking all of us to do.
Amen. And I'm glad you touched on that last part, because I'm sure you understand that the mission of Catholic schools first is to evangelize and to make saints, and
That's
then
right.
to educate. So I think one easy way is to remind principals just the school where they are. They're in a Catholic school first.
That's right.
But then again, I love the way that you just bring light to the supports that are necessary before you go, because you don't want to just go in and say, okay, yes, I'll take them all, and then figure it out. No, it can't be that way. It has to be.
Exactly, and I think sometimes your heart is the heart is big, and you want to do these. You want to take all children in, but you have to also have a program that has integrity, and that's what's owed to those boys and girls and their moms and dads as well. So it's not an inclusion program of any sort should never be. I have extra seats filled now, and let's see what we can do to help them. No, the plan has to already be in place of how we're going to help boys and girls before we hit the final accept button there.
Absolutely. But on the other end, looking at the practicality, if that's the word that I can use, 8 to
Yeah,
10% of all students have special needs. So
absolutely.
if a school is looking for enrollment, that's one way that they can also increase enrollment. So it's just,
100%.
but it's a
It
different way
is.
to do it.
It is. That's right. It's just as long as we're like because I meet with all new families coming into the school, we have a good understanding. Our director of resource, when the family comes with, let's say they're coming from the public school with an IEP or a 504 plan, we sit, we look, say, okay, we just make sure that we're able to provide everything that child needs. And for the most part, 9 out of 10 of those children are accepted here at St. Elizabeth's School. Might even be higher than that.
No,
So,
beautiful.
yes,
No, as long
yes,
as we can meet their needs in a
that's right.
Christ-centered environment, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Speaking of beautiful things, I see that you are on social media a lot. You're one of my favorite follows, because I always know that there's something going on with you. Looking at
Thank
the
you.
topic
Thank
of,
you.
you're welcome. Looking at the topic of social media, Vincent, that's a great resource for schools. Can you talk about, first of all, how you use it in your school, and how then it can be used to advance the cause of inclusive education?
I was never. I know people always laugh at all my selfies and with the kids and all the tweets and the Instagram posts I put out. That was never on my radar to do
Really?
until I went to a workshop at NCEA. Peter Cerrone presented it, and he was absolutely outstanding. And he talked a lot about putting good news out about your school. And he said you may never gain a new student from it. You may never feel, let's say, the benefit of it, but people will always know there are good things happening at your Catholic school. So in the midst of, we're hearing this school is closing and this, there's also great news about Catholic schools that we have to put out in order for people to keep it. And it was just such a great, so that inspired me. Then I came back and I learned how to use these social media pieces. And from there, I really started to target. So if you look, every morning I put out the saint of the day. So Catholic pieces, the Catholic part of my Instagram and
Hmm.
my Twitter essential, and that's weaved throughout the day and weaved throughout a lot of the tweets that I send. The next piece would be anything that positive that's happening here at our school. So teacher recognition, student recognitions, but sometimes the simple stuff. You'll see that in a lot of my posts. It's just every day a visit to the zoo. During my observations, I send out a picture from an observation. And then I targeted growth mindset, a real important concept to, if certainly changed my life, and hopefully it's changed the life of some of our students and teachers as well. That's another large part of what I tweet out. And then you'll see a lot of hashtags that I add. So I'll tag a lot of what you do and just tag something inclusive education. And I'm always surprised when our director of admissions here tells me, or I talk to new families that are coming in that will say, I saw that you put out on social media something about, and then they'll mention something, and but a tweet or something on Instagram. But it's interesting how many people notice. Number one, they notice your feeds, that they're looking, because they are looking at it, whether we think they are or they're not, or they are. But the inclusive education piece, our resource department, people take note of that, and then they know, they get a feel for, this is a school that does its best to accept all learners. So that, I feel that's benefited me tremendously, and I've encouraged several of my colleagues to tap into that world. Tricia McGann at Our Lady of Lourdes.
Yes.
She's the principal there, an expert in the field. She's hosting a symposium in mid-May. Another great inspiration for me. And I also tag a lot of her things, just again to put the word out about all the good things that are happening in the world of inclusive education in our Catholic schools, and also to let parents know that that's a philosophy that we embrace here.
And not only that, but the Catholic school parent has changed over the years, has evolved.
Right.
They shouldn't. I think gone are the days that we send notes home to our parents, and that's the only way. I mean, we're constantly getting text messages. I know my child goes to a Catholic school, and we're getting text messages. So why shouldn't we use the social media platform to advance the cause the way that you're doing at St. Elizabeth School?
That's right.
So, and just using a simple hashtag like inclusive education or all are welcome or Catholic Ed Excel, the way that we do it, exceptional the way we do it at NCA, goes a long way to educating our parents. And then you never know where it goes. A parent might be looking for something, and we're always on social media anyway, and then they might look and say, "Oh, look at what St. Elizabeth School is doing."
That's exactly right. Yes, and like I would say, just like I say, oh, look what Our Lady of Lourdes is doing, or look at what some of the schools you visit are doing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It inspires you. It inspires you.
Exactly.
And it also calls you to take risks.
And that was my next point. If they're doing it, why can't we do it? We can put our own spin on it. Well,
that's right.
We're closing in on the end of the show, but you've been talking about it, but I just want you to put a bow on it, as they say. What should Catholic special education look like, Vincent?
I think in the ideal world, all of our Catholic families and all of their children should have a place. That's in my ideal setting. That's what we strive. That's what we're working toward at St. Elizabeth School, and not just our Catholic families, but anyone who desires a Catholic education for their children. That all of those children should be able to find a place in our Catholic school to become part of this great family. As I like to say, this is my family here at St. Elizabeth, and I want that for all of our families, all of our children who are here.
That is a beautiful sentiment. Vincent, I thank you for joining my show. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue your mission at St. Elizabeth School. And I will be praying for you, brother. And I hope you have a great day. God bless you.
God bless you. God bless you too.
Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.